Well, half the teams in the state are probably watching this online because sectional play underway. We're getting ready for the sectional semifinals. I'm Ross Kinsey, and as always from the News-Sentinel, Tom Davis. We've got a couple of huge matchups that we're going to talk about here, and let's start in 5A. We have Northside, Snider. We'll call this round 2 because
that's right.
You know, back in week 6, it seemed like it was so long ago, but yet it wasn't. Northside with a nice 19-16 win over the Panthers, first time in 26 games. What do you see happening here in sectionals?
Well, there's no love lost between these two teams, and so that alone makes it an interesting matchup. But, you know, I really think that these two teams are going in different directions right now. Yes, Northside beat Snider last month, but Snider, since that point, has played really, really well. Their offensive and defensive lines, which are huge, they are finally taking advantage of that size and strength, and they're running the ball incredibly well, and they're passing it enough to keep defenses honest. So Snider's playing really, really well. Northside, on the other hand, they struggled last week in the sectional. After beating Northrop 28-14 in the last week of the regular season, they struggled a lot last week with Northrop, barely got by them, and they gave up over 400 yards passing. And their quarterback struggled, only completing 5 of 19 passes. So on both sides of the ball, defensively and offensively, Northside doesn't have momentum coming into this week. On paper, this is a really good matchup, but I really think Snider's going to win this game with some breathing room.
Yeah, I mean, the last game came down to a questionable call on 4th down by Coach Tippmann with Snider. Safe to say he probably won't make that call again.
Well, I don't know, because Coach Tippmann after that game said, hey, we're going for the win. We're not going to just try for a tie and shoot for overtime. We're here to win games. And so I wouldn't be shocked at all if Coach Tippmann, especially as well as his team has played the last 3-4 weeks, wouldn't make that same call again.
What do you think it comes down to? Just confidence at this point?
I think that the Snider offensive and defensive lines, which are really strong and really big, I mean, boy, they look like a small college lineup with the size when you read the program. They're finally playing up to their capability, and that's opened up even bigger holes for guys like John Nelson to run the ball behind. And so I really think it's been the play of the offensive and defensive line for Snider that's kind of flipped that switch, and boy, they've played with some really good teams since then.
But of course, Northside, they've got athletes.
Yes,
so
they do.
You can never count out the Redskins. We've seen them. I mean, they're solid 8-2. I mean, they haven't won 8 games by just a fluke.
That's true. They do have the athletic ability, and one thing about the Northside kids is they're not hung up on what's happened in the past. You know, they weren't worried about the streak that Snider held over them. They just came out and they played that game as hard as they could, and they fought literally in some cases to get the win as the game kind of turned ugly a little bit. But Northside does have, you know, the kind of mental toughness that you need to kind of just ignore adversity and fight through things, and they can do that.
And that game Friday night, Chambers Field, 7 o'clock. We'll, of course, have that one covered. Now let's check out 4A. We've got another rematch that you could say. New Haven, 8-2, travels to Bishop Dwenger, 6-4. Don't let that record affect what you think is going to happen in this game. Bishop Dwenger, obviously, you know, 6-4, not what they're up to in years past, but this team is playing some pretty good ball.
Well, between Snider and Dwenger, I think they scheduled everybody they could except the Patriots. I mean, they tried to toughen up their schedule as much as they possibly could. And so, you know, in both cases of Snider and Dwenger, you can kind of throw the records out and just look at how they're playing on the field. Bishop Dwenger has played really, really well the last month of the season, with the exception of really last week at Columbia City. They played well in parts of their game, but boy, they were really sloppy in other parts of their game. They turned the ball, or they fumbled the ball 7 times. They didn't lose all those fumbles, but they put the ball on the ground 7 times, and so you cannot do that against New Haven. The big question in this game is, will Tavon Hurst play? Through social media, the rumors are running rampant that he will not be academically eligible on Friday. Now, I have to be perfectly clear on this. I don't know what the situation with his grades are, whether he's a straight A student or an average student or anywhere in between. We did call New Haven High School today, and they said grades are coming out this week, and he is eligible today. They would not say whether he will be eligible Friday at 7 o'clock. So that remains to be seen. You want to get there at about 6:45 and see what the pregame warm-ups look like and see if he's on the field in his uniform or not, because that plays a massive part in this game. Now, if New Haven does not have Devon Hurst, they've got a big uphill battle to beat Bishop Dwenger. Even though Bishop Dwenger is not the Dwenger that we've all come to know and love over the last years, they're down a notch this year, but they're still really, really good. If Hurst plays, boy, this is going to be a shootout. I really think that this will be a very close game if Hurst plays.
Yeah, I mean, looking back to last year's regional championship game, you know, on the scoreboard, Dwenger won 42-26, but Hurst kind of broke free late in that game, and even if you, I mean, you have to contain him if you want to beat New Haven.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty evident in what's happened so far this year. Homestead shut Hurst down, and obviously the scoreboard reflected that. But, I mean, New Haven does have other athletes, but he has to play for them to win.
Absolutely he does. Now, Dwenger's defense is not nearly as good this year as it was last year, and Hurst had a great game against him last year. And he's a year bigger, stronger, and faster this time around. So if Hurst plays, this is really going to be difficult for Dwenger to contain him. But if he doesn't play, I think Dwenger wins this fairly easily. And I'll tell you, a player I'm really impressed with Dwenger is Dalton Wheeler. He was a starting quarterback at the beginning of this year, lost his job as the starting quarterback, but he still continued to contribute. He's a running back for them, and he's really making big plays, and he's also a great linebacker. He made a big impact in last Friday's game against Columbia City defensively, and he was one of the few players that could hang on to the ball for Dwenger offensively. He didn't put the ball on the ground. And when Mike Viacable was struggling and running the option last week, they went back to Dalton Wheeler at quarterback, and he took a few snaps and really settled the offense down. Very, very impressed with how he has continued to maintain a team-first attitude and a positive attitude and really contribute to this team.
Something tells me the Saints will not fumble 7 times.
No, they will not. They will not. I guarantee it.